Good morning. My name is Kirti Patel, and welcome to this webinar on how do the new job support schemes work and what does it mean for my business. Your presenters today are Claire DL from HR Department, Edit Gardner from Gardner Webb Accounting, and myself, Kirti Patel from Career Inspiration Limited. Claire DL and Edit Gardner will be taking you through some of the questions that business owners have had on the job support scheme, the job support scheme extension, and the bonus retention scheme. I will be taking you through outplacement. So this is essentially practical redundancy support should you need to make redundancies despite the extra support that is available to you. If I could please ask you to use the chat facility to ask any questions, please feel free to do so during the presentation. We will be answering these questions at the end in our Q&A section. Thank you very much. I'm now going to just hand over to Claire, who's going to start you off with the job support scheme.
So as Kirti said, we're going to try and explain in a bit more detail the job support scheme and the job retention bonus. So we're going to give you an overview of the scheme, some examples, and then as Kirti said, we'll answer any questions at the end. So the furlough scheme was introduced by the government in March. That's been in 3 different phases since August, and that now finishes on the 31st of October. So on the 24th of September, the Chancellor introduced the job support scheme. It's there similar to the furlough to try and prevent companies from having to make people redundant. So it's intended to protect viable jobs and will run for 6 months from the 1st of November. Then there was an extension to that, targeting industries that are forced to close by the government, where the tier systems come in, and that will mean that companies will receive 67% of the salaries, up to £2,100 per employee per month. The employer will need to cover the national insurance and pension contributions, but not the wages. And to be eligible, they must work a minimum of 7 consecutive days whilst the business is subject to restrictions. The scheme is due to come into effect on the 1st of November, so the same as the wider job support scheme. And we're still awaiting for further details to be announced on that. So for the job support scheme, you need to be a UK business, have a UK bank account. You don't have to have previously furloughed your staff, and it's aimed at SMEs. Larger businesses will need to undergo a financial assessment test, which the SMEs will not. Employees must have been on your payroll on or before the 23rd of September, and that's based on your RTI submission either on or before September. So depending on when you pay, that could be your August submission. Employees must work a minimum of 33% of their normal hours, and their normal hours is before furlough. So it's not the hours that they were doing if they were furloughed, it's their contractual hours that were in place before all of this started. The threshold of the 33% will be reviewed after the first 3 months, and that could change. And employees will be able to be placed on and off the scheme. They don't have to work the same work pattern each week, but they must have each working arrangement cover a minimum of 7 days. So throughout the 6 months, they don't have to work exactly the same pattern, but each pattern needs to last for a minimum of 7 days. So what will be reimbursed? So all of the worked hours, so the minimum of 33%, will be paid in full. The period of unworked hours will be split into 2/3. One of these thirds will be covered by the government. That's capped at £697.92 per month, equivalent to an annual salary of £37,500. One of the thirds must be paid by the employer, and the other third is not paid by anyone, so nobody will cover the second third. Employer national insurance contributions and pensions are not covered by the job support scheme. So as I said, the employer will have to cover those. It will be on the online portal, similar if you use the furlough scheme. Claims will be made from December and then monthly thereafter. You have to pay the employee and then you'll receive the reimbursement afterwards. As I said, calculation of normal wages, so that's their contractual hours before they were furloughed. And if an employee has been furloughed, that must be calculated on their pre-furlough wages as well. So if you're planning to use the job support scheme, it must be agreed in writing. So you need to have a letter that goes alongside your contract, which explains the hours that they will be working, the amount that they will be paid. HMRC will check claims, so you must keep those records. And employees cannot be made redundant or put on notice of redundancy during a period when the employer is claiming the grant. So if you're planning to utilise the job support scheme, you need to be sure that you're not likely to need to make any of those people redundant while you're making those claims. And so I would advise you to run the numbers for various scenarios before you make your final decision. So I'm now going to pass you over to Edit, who's going to run through some examples for you to hopefully make those percentages a little bit clearer.
Thank you. I mean, I must admit I had to read it a few times to get my head around it, and I have run several scenarios. So let's try and break it down and see if it makes a bit more sense afterwards. So if you wouldn't mind just moving the slide, please. We're going to take a chap called Johnny, whose normal working hours, so regardless of whether he was furloughed or not, pre-furloughed, normal working hours would have been 39 hours. So this chap works full-time for our company. The first thing to do is we need to split those 39 hours into working hours and non-working hours. Remember, there's a 1/3 minimum, so we assume that Johnny has to work at least 13 hours. He can work more hours, but 13 hours is the minimum. So step number one, we literally just split between working hours and non-working hours. Once we've done that, we do a little bit more splitting on the non-working hours front. So the non-working hours then get split into thirds, equal thirds. And the apportionment of the payments will then follow these splits. So 1/3 of these non-working hours will be paid by the company. 1/3 will be the support from the government. And 1/3 is the one that essentially the employee is losing and isn't going to get paid for. Very important, guys, there is no top-up option at the moment in this particular proposition from the government. Now, the working hours, we will just pay as normal, as we would if somebody's working for us. So there's no trickery on that side at all. If we put numbers to this particular chart, so let's assume that Johnny earns about 26,000 a year, probably a little bit below average, but fairly typical. So that works out at £500 a week. If we split down the £500 based on a third working pattern, he's going to get paid £167 for the hours worked. He's going to get paid another £111 for hours that not worked at our cost. And then he's also going to get paid an extra £111 via the job support grant. Would you mind just moving to the next slide, please? Thank you. No, sorry, one back, please. So if we look, essentially, us as employers are picking up the tab for the hours that they worked, but also a little bit for the hours that they are not working. Could we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So, as Claire already mentioned, the employer's NI and the pension costs are not covered. To be fair, I think for most businesses we deal with, these are negligible compared to the actual wage cost. But we do have two questions at the moment which we are unclear on, and I think once the guidance comes out, please check back in with your accountants on this one. The government said that they are going to keep their support at £697.92 per month, which is somebody roughly who earns £37,500. What they didn't say is whether they are going to cap the employer's required contribution the same way for the hours that the employee doesn't work. Now, I would hope they will. That's what they did in the furlough scheme, but it's not being confirmed at the moment. The other thing that is a little bit odd, and we need to be very mindful of, is that at the moment there isn't a top-up option for the third of the unworked hours that the employee isn't working. And we have seen quite a few top-ups of varying percentages through the furlough scheme. So employers need to be mindful of this in case that conversation needs to be had with employees. I included this table because I think it's a quite useful rule of thumb to quickly calculate what costs the employer might be in for. So the employee hours that are worked, I've run a few scenarios ranging from 1/3, so the minimum that we need to cover, to 70% working hours for an employee. And at the very, very bottom of this table, what you can see is the rough rule of thumb of what your wages cost would be for this employee. So this would essentially be what is going to hit your pockets. The employee earnings are actually, I think, fairly decently calculated in these scenarios. They will get somewhere between 78 to 90% of wages. So there shouldn't be a major downturn in terms of their wages, apart from the no top-up scenario at this point. Could we go to the next slide, please? Thank you.
So thank you. So we're now going to move on to the job retention bonus. So employees must have been furloughed for you to be able to claim the bonus. So you must have used the job retention scheme, and employees must not have been served notice at the start of February. So they have to have been continuously employed by you until the 31st of January. We're expecting further guidance to be released at the end of January, and claims can be made between the 15th of February and the 31st of March next year. It's a £1,000 one-off taxable payment, and employees must have been paid a minimum of £1,560 gross in total for the below periods. So that's the 6th of November to the 5th of December, the 6th of December to the 5th of January, and the 6th of January to the 5th of February. And Edith's going to take you through some examples.
Yes, I mean, this one we haven't actually got majorly detailed guidance on, but they did put some information out a few days ago, which is quite helpful. So I'm seeing a couple of traps with the job retention bonus, which I want to draw your attention to. So essentially what we're looking at is for monthly paid payrolls, the November, December and January payroll. What we need to be mindful of is they are not saying that you have to pay 1,560 divided by 3 as a minimum over the 3 months. So it might be that you're busier before December and then not so busy after December. But you need to be mindful that you need to pay something, at least something, in every of those 3 months. So if you pay for 2 months, you don't pay for 1 month, you've got a problem because you're not going to be able to claim. So please just be mindful of that. The other one is depending on how the pension contribution relief works for the pension scheme. I think there's also a danger that the pension contributions might pull the taxable figure below this £1,560 unintentionally. So what I would say is on the payslip, just always make sure that that taxable total, even if that's after the pensions, will come to at least the £1,560 over the 3 months. I think they are the 2 traps that I'm a little bit concerned about. So what I'm suggesting now is let's have a look at an employee who was previously furloughed, and we are utilising both schemes for Johnny. Now remember, job support scheme, they don't have to have been furloughed, but for the job retention scheme, sorry, the job retention bonus, they do have to have been previously furloughed in order for the company to qualify. Now, remember I said that the employer has to contribute for the hours that Johnny is not working. And I guess the job retention bonus is going to negate that loss, that additional cost to some extent. So in the example we used, which was Johnny on 26k working the 3rd hours, we essentially paid £1,443 over this November to January period for hours that Johnny didn't work. Now, if we claim the job retention bonus, which is £1,000, that painful cost of £1,443 actually reduces somewhat, and our actual, let's call it, loss reduces to £443. So I would definitely say, you know, if they have been previously furloughed, take into account whether the job retention bonus is going to negate that that loss to some extent. One of the questions that I know we are being asked, and I suspect so are you, Claire and Curtis, is what happens when you essentially have got more people than you need to cover your wages requirements at the moment. Is it better to make one redundant and keep one on to work full time, or is it actually better for the company to keep both of them and make them work, say, half of their usual time? So I just ran through those scenarios to see what figure I would come out with. And this is what I found. So we're taking 2 like-for-like employees, cunningly called Johnny and Jenny. On the left-hand side is the scenario where one of them works 100% of their hours. On the other side is 2 of them still on the payroll, both of them working at 50% of their hours. And what I found is that the actual net cost to the employer is very, very similar between the 2 scenarios. So for one person staying on, you're looking at a cost of 6.5k plus the redundancy cost. If you have 2 people, both of whom were previously furloughed, and you can claim the bonus for them, that net cost is £6,667. So it's actually a very comparable cost between the 2 scenarios. And I think in that respect, this scheme is designed quite well to try and retain staff on the payroll. The issue starts when we're looking at a slightly bigger workforce. So let's assume in this case, we're looking at Johnny, Jenny and Jack. And here the scenario I've run is, do I keep on 2 people at 50% hours, or do I keep on 3 people at 33% hours? And I think there's a little bit more thinking to be done here. Once again, we're assuming they've all been furloughed, they are like-for-like employees. But what you can probably see is that the difference between the net cost is actually now fairly significant for the employers. You're looking at keeping 3 people on with a cost of £7,800 versus keeping 2 people on with a cost of £6,600 plus the redundancy. And I think this is where I can't emphasize enough that every situation for every employer is going to be so different. We need to look at the whole workforce. We need to look at what those potential redundancy costs might be. We need to look at what the expectation is after February and actually run those numbers through to then come to the individual solution for that particular company. There's not a one-size-fits-all situation in this case. And I know that sometimes, unfortunately, the answer is going to be, but we don't want the answer to be. And I know that redundancy is on the cards for a few of our employers that we are working with. I also know that for small businesses, it's actually quite an emotive situation to be in. And I just wanted to draw your attention to a little part of the legislation, which is Section 310 of ITEPA 2003, which is in relation to outplacement support counselling. So employees who are losing their jobs sometimes get a redundancy package, of which outplacement support counselling is a part of. And there is actually an exemption in the legislation that says if this employee worked for you for at least 2 years, if this is something you generally provide to all your employees to try and help them finding other gainful employment, then we're not going to tax you extra on the pleasure of being a responsible employer here. So if that is something that unfortunately you need to get to that position with redundancy, just please bear in mind there is an exemption if you want to offer some support to your employees.
Thank you. So as we've probably shown, the job support scheme will not necessarily eliminate every business from having to make some alternative decisions. So there's lots of different ways, and as I said earlier on in the presentation, we would advise you to run lots of different scenarios to work out which is the best one for your business. So some other ways could be to reduce hours but not use the job support scheme. So you could have multiples of some people on the job support scheme, but some people just on reduced hours. There is a potential that you could renegotiate salaries, review commission, bonuses, benefits, job shares, redistributing workloads, unpaid sabbaticals, employees being able to work from home if they're not already, which could also help you to reduce hours and pay, and then potentially redundancies. Most of these will require you to consult with your employees, but they're alternatives that you can also think of.
Curtis, sorry, you need to unmute yourself.
Sorry, thank you. Thank you very much, both Claire and Edith. That was a very useful presentation. And from someone who is not really accountancy based, I actually did get the numbers, so thank you very much for that. Just wanted to go through some of the outplacement support that Edith mentioned earlier. So what is outplacement support? So outplacement support is practical support which is given to your departing employees to help them quickly and effectively manage their transition into a new role. What are the benefits to yourselves in investing in outplacement? Well, first and foremost, it helps you to protect your brand. So any employees who are unfortunately having to be made redundant, who feel well supported are not going to really look at alternative measures like tribunals. That they're going to actually feel that you've actually done everything that you can to ensure that the redundancy process is fair, and that you're actually going to be helping them through gaining sort of employment as well. Your reputation is protected, so any employee who is well supported is not likely to go to the local news or on social media to say that my employer is not treating me very well. So investing in outplacement essentially means that you can actually be seen to be a good, supportive employer. Investing in your employees, investing in your employees' future. And this is not necessarily going to be useful for yourself just now, but also in the future as well, when you may need to actually engage in any recruitment drives. At the moment, you may need to actually lose some good people, but you want those good people to essentially come back to you should you need them in the future as well. Your brand value is also likely to increase. So you may have seen recently that there is actually a trend whereby customers and employees are ethically minded. And the more ethical you present yourself, the better it is for your brand. And investing in outplacement is one of those ways that you can present your brand to be an ethical brand, and to indicate that actually you do care about your employees, and that is one of your brand values. Your departing employees can also become brand ambassadors for you. So it might be that in future you may need to recruit additional staff, and if your departing employees have been treated well, then they can potentially pass you on as a recommendation to anyone that they know of that might be able to match your suitable vacancies. Other benefits to yourself are in relation to time, money, and productivity. So investing in an outplacement partner who actually can deliver results for your departing employees enables you to save time. As business owners, you know how your business runs. You've got lots of things going on at the moment, lots of challenges, a lot of decisions to make. Investing in an outplacement partner means that you've actually got the time to concentrate on your business, whilst your departing employees can actually then be looked after by myself or other outplacement providers, and help them to sort of quickly and effectively manage their transition. Outplacement can also be negotiated as part of a settlement agreement, and that could be potentially cheaper than any other alternative demands that a departing employee may ask for. And it may also be more valuable for them in respect of essentially gaining employment quickly and effectively. Survivor's guilt is also a key consequence of redundancies. So existing employees are likely to feel guilty in respect of being the ones that are sort of staying. And investing in outplacement actually enables you to sort of send the message to those employees that should there be any sort of difficult circumstances or challenging circumstances again, these employees are still going to be looked after. That they are still going to, that they are still going to essentially, it's going to be better for them. So now that we've looked at some of the benefits of outplacement, I just wanted to take you through some of the key considerations for an outplacement partner. So first and foremost, it's important for you to set a budget for outplacement and conduct a cost-benefit analysis. So there are going to be varying costs for outplacement, but usually if you work with an outplacement provider, then they will actually try and provide a tailored package for yourself, which is going to be of mutual benefit anyway. Secondly, look at what services actually match what your employees are looking for. So have a conversation with your employees, ask what they're actually looking for, ask what they need help with, and then invest in an outplacement service which actually then matches those needs. I've had quite a few conversations with departing employees, and they've said that an outplacement partner who actually works with their employer to provide a tailored service is a lot more valuable for them. Other considerations are they outplacement specialists and are they level 6 qualified career guidance professionals? So consider whether they're actually qualified to deliver career coaching. The CDI, which is the professional body for career coaching professionals, actually recommends that anyone who delivers career guidance should be level 6 qualified. Have they dealt with outplacement before? So have they actually worked with an employer? Have they been able to deliver results for those departing employees? What are their testimonials like? Have they received any testimonials? Have they looked at, have clients actually spoken about the personal qualities of these career coaches? Usually that's a good indicator, because it means that a career coach is likely to be able to build a positive working relationship with your departing employees. And that's going to really help your employees to really open up in those really difficult, challenging conversations following redundancy. And it will also help the career coach to really get the best out of the client as well. Also consider what their process is like. So I found that some outplacement providers only offer a generic service, and that may not necessarily be helpful for your departing employees. In this sort of situation, they really do need to talk to someone about their specific situation, so that but when someone is working with them, they can actually intensively focus on their situation and actually make sure that they're looking at all the right roles and they're looking at all of the right search engines, right websites. They're actually working on their CV, making sure that they stand out, making sure that the interviews that they're having with employers actually makes them the best versions of themselves to those employers. Which is why the last point is, do they actually provide a tailored service? Make sure that anything that you are providing for your employees is a tailored service. So just to summarize, some of the typical services that outplacement providers provide are individual career guidance consultations. This is where a conversation is had with your departing employees to help them with their career direction. The job searching strategy and techniques enables your departing employees to really understand how to effectively job search, looking at all of the keywords in search engines, making sure that there's a narrow focus. Looking at specialist websites or recruitment websites so that your job searching is efficient and you're not really wasting your time and efforts looking at websites which are not going to be of value to yourself. Other practical support that I offer is CV and cover letter coaching, interview coaching, and LinkedIn profile coaching. These are essentially either in the form of workshops or individual, and they essentially help your departing employees to make them stand out. Alongside the career coaching and employability coaching that I do, I also appropriately signpost and refer to complementary services. So if I was working with a business owner, for instance, delivering outplacement support for them, and they needed some information on accountancy, for instance. I'd be looking at sort of referring them on to Gardner Webb accounting. I would also be looking at other services as well, like mental health and well-being, and financial planning too. So there are two ways of working with myself. One of them is group workshops. I have three group workshops which have been helpful for departing employees. So that's practical job search support, getting the most out of your CV, and how to interview to get the job offer. These workshops are tailored to your employees' needs with a set limit of employees, so a maximum of 15 per workshop, so that each of your employees get the most out of the workshop, and these are delivered online. These workshops are just examples. If there's other sort of topics that your employees would like to know more about, then I'm more than happy to work with you and your employees to actually tailor and deliver a bespoke workshop for your employees. At the moment, these workshops will be delivered online, either through Zoom or another platform, which you're used to as well. The other way that your departing employees could work with me are through individual consultations, and these will be career guidance, CV and cover letter, job searching strategy, and LinkedIn profile coaching. The career guidance, as I mentioned before, is about helping your employees through career direction. So it might be that your departing employees are looking to use redundancy as an opportunity for a career change. This is where a coaching conversation like this would be really helpful for them, so that they can really narrow down their focus and make sure that any sort of marketing materials that they then prepare for themselves in terms of CV, cover letter, LinkedIn profile is then tailored to that career choice. The CV and cover letter, job searching and LinkedIn profile coaching consultations, they're really about evaluating the employees' experiences and their existing strategies to ensure that they're actually maximizing the value of themselves to an employer. These consultations are actually tailored to your employees' needs and actually delivered live and online. Just to give you an idea of how these services have helped clients of mine, and these have been clients who I've been able to help during the pandemic, I'm going to take you through a couple of case studies. One of the employees that I helped during the pandemic was a digital marketing specialist. She was in her mid-40s. Unfortunately, she had been made redundant. And as a lot of people in her position, she panicked. She basically felt that her future seemed uncertain. The career coaching that I delivered actually helped her with a better structure in terms of her short-term, medium-term and longer-term goals. And as a result of this session, she felt more positive and felt brighter about her future. Following this, once we had an idea of what she wanted to do with her career, I engaged in a CV coaching consultation with her, and this was where we looked at all of her experiences to see what achievements she was able to make in those, and also to see her process. So sometimes people think that, oh, you know, it's just my day job, it is what I do, but it's actually the way that they do things which actually makes them stand out as well. And this sometimes that's something which can be really useful to create a standout CV. this particular client was actually in a role 3 weeks later. So investing in outplacement can really help you and your employees to actually effectively and quickly transition your employees into a new role. This is just a testimonial from the client. The other client was in her early 20s, and she was a HR operations assistant. With this client, because it was the first time that she had obviously been made redundant, her job searching confidence was knocked. It was knocked massively. And with that initial career coaching session, it was very much a confidence building exercise to really help her to see what her value was and what she could actually bring to an employer. And one of the key things that she said about me was that I actually helped to bring the best out of her. Following this, I looked at CV coaching with her, and following the consultation and the CV that was done for her, she actually found that it was noticed by more employers and recruiters, and she actually received a lot more interviews than she had previously. Following this, I also engaged in interview coaching with her, and this was where we looked at interviewing techniques, looking at some key questions, and we also did a mock interview as well. And as a result of my interview coaching, she consistently progressed into the next stage of the interview process. Alongside this, I also gave her some job searching support as well. And as a result of my guidance, she was in a role 6 weeks after being made redundant as well. And these are just some contact details for myself, if you'd like to get in touch. We have come to the end of the webinar now, and would like to just open the floor for questions.
Okay, we do have quite a few questions here. The first one is probably the easy one to answer. Please, could you send through a copy of the slides? Yes, we will make the slides available, as well as I believe there is a recording of the webinar that will be available. So the next question, how will the job retention bonus be claimed? Do you expect this to be a similar process to the way CJR's grant is claimed at present? Yes, we do. We believe it's going to be a one-off claim. And Claire, I think you mentioned the window of opportunity for the claim. If I'm not mistaken, it's a 6 week period in which you can claim it, and as a one-off payment.
Yes.
I expect it's going to be online. Right, the next question is, what does a minimum 7-day working pattern mean? This is an interesting one because it kind of sounds so obvious, but actually it's not. I must admit, I found it quite surprising that the furlough scheme worked on calendar days, but I guess it makes sense. So a 7-day working pattern I interpret as a Monday to Sunday period, even if it's less than 7 working days. Would you agree with that, Claire?
Yes, I'm just going to read a little bit an explanation which might make it a little bit clearer. So it says employees will be able to cycle on and off the scheme and do not have to be working the same pattern each month, but each short time working arrangement must cover a minimum period of 7 days.
And that 7 days is 7 calendar days, we believe.
Yeah.
Thank you. Claire, I think the next question is yours. How do I go about putting my employees on reduced hours going forward? Are you able to provide some sort of process template, sample letters of how I should go about this?
Okay, so there's not one answer to answer that question. So some of it will depend whether or not the employees have been furloughed. So they've got an agreement because they were furloughed that is alongside their contract. Some of it will depend what's in their contract of employment, so what's in their original terms and conditions. Most of it will be done through conversations and consultation. There's no fixed period for reducing someone's hours. And yes, I could help with template letters and process, but we would need to look at some of those scenarios that I just mentioned. So have they been furloughed and what's in their terms and conditions?
Okay, I think it's also very important, and I know that our clients were getting a bit fed up with me probably emphasizing this, but I think HMRC are going to be very, very strict on the enforcement. So I would very strongly recommend that all of this is following the conversations then put into writing. Would you agree with that, Claire?
Yeah, it must be confirmed. Whatever you do must be confirmed in writing, because the HMRC will use that as the evidence that effectively the employee agreed to that arrangement, because you're changing their terms and conditions. So yes, anything that changes should be confirmed in writing.
Okay, thank you. Right, the next question we have is, if redundancy is necessary, what help or guidance are you able to provide? And I think we can all contribute to this a little bit. I'm guessing that my contribution would be the calculations, making sure that the statutory redundancy pay, the contractual issues, holiday pay issues, potentially payment in lieu of notice issues are correctly calculated and treated. Claire?
So I can provide as little or as much support as anyone needs. So that could be just to guide you through the process, provide you template letters, information that you need to make sure you cover throughout the consultation period. With some clients, I've run the programs for them. So they've not been comfortable enough to do it themselves. So they've paid me to do the whole process for them from beginning to end. So it just depends what support people are looking for.
Thank you. And Curtie?
This would be following support from Claire. Should an employer need a redundancy consultation? So if I would say that that's probably the first point of call, because you want to be making sure that the redundancy process is fair before you make any redundancies, and you may actually find that there might be actually alternatives to redundancy. But if it comes down to it and you do need to make redundancies, then as I mentioned, there are a number of services which I can offer for your departing employees to help them quickly and effectively transition into a new role. So this will be in the form of group workshops which are tailored to your needs, either on CVs, job searching support, interviews, LinkedIn profiling, or it could be individual consultations with career guidance, job searching, CV coaching, interview coaching, LinkedIn profile coaching.
Thank you. And I think, Curtie, this is probably going to be something for you to respond to as well. Interesting question. I mean, as an employer, I don't think I was familiar enough with what career coaching is. Good question, I think. How can I assess if career coaching is the right option for my business before starting the process of finding a coach?
Interesting. Okay. So just so that I'm understanding this question. So what was the question?
How can I assess if career coaching is the right option for my employees before looking for a coach?
Okay. I would probably say do some research. So that there is a number of tips and needs, sort of like FAQs, which are actually available online. Secondly, and I think actually the most valuable way of finding out whether it's going to be useful to you is actually to speak to us. It's about having these conversations and if I know what your needs are, and if I know what your employees' needs are, then I can do my best to essentially meet those needs.
I think also it's important what you mentioned a little bit earlier about talking to your employees, because I know some of them have got you know, issues with CV preparation, some of them have got issues with interviews, and basically just trying to find out consensus to see what may help would be a good starting point as well, I would think. Yeah. Okay, we've got a couple of questions left. If you do have some more questions, please just pop them into the Q&As quickly. We are doing okay for time at the moment. Right, do you have any cash flow templates available for me to use to assess if redundancy or reduced hours are required? Few think it's in there, but I think the very important point is here is that with the furlough scheme, we were actually able to claim funds prior to payment. With these new schemes, we have to find the cash, pay our employees, and then claim back at a future point. So yes, we do have cash flow templates to work you through whether there's going to be issues with cash flow. Simple Excel templates, I like to keep things relatively simple, so I'm very happy to make those available. Now, in terms of assessing if redundancy or reduced hours are required, I think Claire and I can only echo again, let's work through the individual options and the individual assessments, because there are so many variables here. You know, I've come across situations now where I guess the unexpected was the answer, and rather than you know, contractually permanently reducing people's hours, actually utilising the schemes produce better results ultimately for the employer. And I think the next question is for me as well. Will my accountant be able to do the job retention bonus claim for me, or will I need to do this myself? Yes, I believe the job retention bonus claim can be claimed by the accountant. Very similar to the furlough scheme, they did allow accountants to actually assist with that. It's the self-employment support scheme where accountants are not able to assist with the claims. Oh, another question for Claire. What are my statutory obligations if redundancy becomes necessary?
So some of that depends on how many people you need to make redundant, and the consultation periods. Depending on the numbers, sometimes you need to complete a HR1 form, and then the other ones would be anything that's contractual that you need to pay. So your statutory redundancy, any benefits, notice pay, holidays, pensions, would all need to be covered.
Thank you. Oh, you wish you hadn't mentioned that magic word, don't you? Fair question. I don't know the answer either. What is an HR1 form?
So if you're going to make large-scale redundancies, so it only applies for larger redundancies, you have to complete a HR1 form with the number of people that you're making redundant, and it's designed to give the government the heads up that you're going to make redundancies.
Okay, so how many employees are we talking about here?
So more than 20.
More than 20. Okay, so less than 20 employees potentially being made redundant. Don't worry about the HR1 form. That's what we're saying. Okay, thank you. Oh, yes, this is a slightly painful question as well, but actually probably a fair outcome. Will the job retention bonus and job support scheme payments be taxable? The answer to this question is yes. So essentially, bear in mind that the job retention bonus you claim and the JSS claim potentially 19% of their incorporation tax terms becomes a chunk that is payable to the taxman. It is fair if you think about it, because you're actually claiming the costs as then expenditure at the same time, so it balances each other out. But yes, it is taxable. I think we are running incredibly good on time. We've got 1 minute left. And I think we are going to have to close questions. So any last minute questions, please just type them in very quickly. We've got one more that just popped in here. Can I pass any of the job retention bonus on to my employees to make up for any top up lost to them? The very honest answer is I don't know. I would tread quite carefully with this one because there is a very specific no top-up clause in the scant information that we have at the moment. So at this point, I would say tread carefully. Potentially consider, doing something later on in the year would be my suggestion. Claire, what do you make of that?
So at the moment, from the information that we have, I would say no, you can't, but we're still waiting further detail. So it is designed to give something back to the business for the costs that they've incurred. So I would suspect no, and that's what I read into it at the moment. But as I say, we're still waiting further guidance. So
yeah. Okie dokie. I think we have come to the end of our time. If you have got any other questions we haven't answered, then please send them through to us. Contact either Kirsty, Claire or myself, and we'll answer them offline. Kirsty, over to you.
Yes, I just wanted to say thank you very much for listening to this webinar. And if there are any further questions, then please do get in touch with us. Thank you.
I think you just cut out, Kirsty. Yeah, thank you very much. So it's not all doom and gloom, but we know it's really, really difficult. Let's just strategically consider what our options are, work through the options, and then make decisions based on what our different outcomes are. That would be my suggestion. Yeah. Claire?
Yes, I agree. It is difficult times for everyone, and we're all here. If you just even need to have a conversation, help you make that decision. So hopefully you found today useful.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.